MPLS TE Autoroute. In this video, I'm going to talk about the Autoroute and how we can configure the Autoroute. After that, how we can verify the status of the Autoroute. Let me to talk about the Autoroute concept first. After that, we can talk about the configuration of this method. The first question is that, what is the Autoroute? Let me talk about this. You know that until now, we learned about two methods to forwarding traffic into the traffic engineering tunnel. Let me write here, forwarding traffic or the real data, okay, traffic into the TE tunnel. Okay, you know that in previous videos, in previous scenarios, we learned about two methods. Okay, the first is a static method. We configure this command IP route, for example, network, and then mask, okay, tunnel number. Okay, you experienced these commands many times in the previous scenarios. Also, we learned about the second method. The second method is the policy-based routing or PBR. Okay, I implemented one scenario about the PBR. You know that in PBR, we are configuring a roadmap. In that roadmap, in the router config roadmap, we need to configure set interface, okay, set interface, and then, for example, tunnel or T tunnel number. Okay, also we configured this feature in the previous scenarios, and we know that we have two options. Both of these two options, as you know, are manual option. This means that the administrator should configure these two methods. Let me write here, administrator, okay, should configure the static route or PBR. This means that none of them are injecting to the routing table, for example, itself. We need administrator to configuring one of these two methods for injecting the tunnel into the routing table. Okay, you know that when we have a tunnel, for example, from the R1 to R5 in this scenario, R1, R2, R3, R4, and R5, okay, assume that we configured one TE tunnel in the between the router 1 to router 5. Okay, after this configuration, after we have one tunnel 0 here, this tunnel 0 cannot be seen in the routing table of R1 with as a for example connected networks. For you know that in some type of tunnels, for example GRE tunnel, when you have one tunnel in one router, you can see the addresses of that tunnel as a connected network in the routing table. But in the T tunnel, we don't have this option. We need to configure until now a static routing or policy-based routing to injecting the tunnel or using the tunnel into the routing tables. Okay, in this video, I'm going to talk about the third method. Okay, the third method name is Autoroute. Because of that, now you can understand that the Autoroute is another feature or is another, for example, function for forwarding traffic into the TE tunnels. Let me to say that when you are using the Autoroute with its commands, and after that you are configuring the, for example, tunnel 0 in the R1, automatically, okay, we can see this tunnel 0 without configuring the static route or PBR in the routing table of the route R1. It's so interesting. This means that we have a connected networks in the R1. But these connected networks has some specific, for example, a specification. The first or attribute, the first is that only the R1 can see this tunnel 0. This means that R2, R3, R4, or R5 cannot, for example, use this tunnel 0. You know that the T tunnel is a specific tunnel. Why? For example, you know that when we are configuring a tunnel, after finding a path with IGP or path option, for example, explicit, with the RSVP, okay, we are receiving or we are learning label from the next hop routers, okay? Because of that, this is a one-way tunnel and the other routers cannot use this tunnel, okay? This means that, yes, we have one connected network after configuring the Autoroute in the router 1 and only in router 1. The router 2 doesn't have any connected network or doesn't have, for example, any network about the tunnel 0 in its routing table, or router 3 or router 4 or even router 5. Okay, this is the first important things that you should know. Let me to review. When you are configuring Autoroute, I will talk about how we can configure it. We will have one connected network about the tunnel 0 in the R1 and only in R1, not R2, not R3, not R4 or even R5, okay? After that, the next thing that is important is that we cannot use this tunnel for forwarding traffic to the, for example, this link, the link that the tunnel passing from that link. We can use this tunnel only for the networks after the tunnel. Look at here, R6, R7. For example, here we have the tunnels, the T tunnel. If you for example, check or verify the routing table, you can see that R1 uses connected for these networks, and also, for example, IGP for the link between R2 and R3, IGP between the link for the link between R3 and R4, and also IGP for the link between router 4 and router 5. But it uses the tunnel for reaching to the link between R5 and R6. I will show you, or R6 to R7. This is the next, or this is the second important option about the Autoroute. The first is that only R1 can see this T tunnel. The second is that we are using this T tunnel for the networks after R5. And the third important notation about this type of for example, importing routes into the importing traffic into the T tunnel is that about the metric of the T tunnel. I will talk about the metric of T tunnel in the future videos with more explanation, but let me to say that the T tunnel's metrics is equal to the lowest IGP metric to the R5. Maybe you say, what does it mean? Let me to write here. Assume that here we have a link with the metric of 10, and then again 10, and then again 10, and after that 10. Okay, you know that for reaching to the R5, for example, R5 loopback 0, now we have metric of 50. Okay, 10, 10, 10, 10, and then 110 for the loopback 0. Metric is equal to the, for example, 50. Okay, and this is the metric of the TE tunnel metric. And let me talk about the usage of this metric. For example, for reaching to the link between R5 and R6, we have 50 plus 10, the T tunnel metric plus the metric of this link. Okay, maybe you say, okay, it's obvious, but let me to talk about this. Look at here. Assume that we have another link between the R1 to the R5, for example, from this pass. Okay, between R1 to R5, we have another link, and this link's metric is 20. But we didn't use this pass. We used this pass for tunnel, for example, with explicit method. Okay, but because the lowest IGP metric to the R5 is 20, the metric of tunnel now is 20. This means that it means that tunnel traversing from the R1 to R2 to R3 to R4 to R5. But because we have a direct link between R1 and R5, and the metric of this link is 20, and it has a lower value than the, for example, bottom pass, the metric of the tunnel is 20. This means that we are using this pass from R1 to R5, but we are using this metric. Okay, I will show you all of these features. Let me first start to configuration of this scenario. After that, we can experience other features about the Autoroute. Autoroute is a simple feature and we can easily use the Autoroute. Here we have a scenario, and also I have a configuration. This configuration is for a scenario like our scenario, but we need to change some of the parameters. Starting from router 1, as you can see, in the first step we need to configure